I'm looking at notes. I'm sick of this discussion happening, and this needs to be the last time that this discussion happens. I am going to tell you right now the discussions that I am unwilling to have. I am unwilling to have a discussion about whether or not we are allowed to politicize tragedies. Conservatives and liberals both politicize tragedies. I can't remember his name, but every time that an immigrant is involved in any kind of violence, it's immediately plastered over the news as a reason why sanctuary cities shouldn't exist. And if you're interested in a less recent example, the Muslim ban is the greatest reaction to politicizing the tragedy of 9/11. So no, I'm not willing to have a discussion about whether or not we can politicize tragedies. The second discussion that I'm unwilling to have is I'm not willing to have a discussion about whether or not tragedies like this could have been stopped by having more guns. We're the only country in the world that has gun laws like ours. We're also the only country in the world that has heart-wrenching tragedies happen at such a blistering rate that we can't even keep track of the number of schools that are being affected by deaths like this. A third discussion that I'm unwilling to have is whether or not gun rights have a relationship to our ability to fight against a tyrannical government. There's two reasons for that. The first reason, like Speaker Paul Ryan has been calling in the last month for funding the military more. We have the largest military in human history. We could give every member of the NRA submachine guns, rocket launchers, and a couple of tanks. And if we set up that militia against the United States government, they would tear through you faster than the shooters are tearing through children at our schools. So you're not going to fight against our military, and you don't get to say that you want guns to fight against our military while simultaneously making our military bigger and bigger and bigger every single year. An additional reason I'm unwilling to have a discussion around the concept of gun rights and their relationship to a tyrannical government is because the Conservative Party, as of right now, is enabling a president who is fighting against the very core democratic ideals that make us who we are. He fights against separation of power. He fights against the validity of the free press, which is integral to our democracy. He has used his position of authority to attempt to obstruct justice in a discussion, in an investigation against him. So you don't get to say that you care about fighting against tyrannical governments and simultaneously support a man who wants military parades. Another discussion that I'm unwilling to have is a discussion about the statistics. If you were an expert statistician and you understand how to pull causality from data, then yeah, you can go ahead and have a discussion with me about whether or not about the nuances of the statistics underneath. But the picture, I think, needs to be as simple as we are the most developed nation. We are one of the most developed nations in the world, and we are the only of the developed nations in the world that has problems like this. So those are the discussions that I am unwilling to have. There's one discussion that I'm willing to have right now, and that discussion is that we need to question what it means to have a right to bear arms. I want to have a discussion around what it means to have a right. And I don't have intense, nuanced points here. I just want to draw up a couple of examples that contextualize the concept of a right. And the main concept that I want to get out is that rights are not absolute. No rights in the United States are treated as absolute. There are conditions under which we violate human rights in almost every context. So privacy rights. We have a right to privacy, but we constantly constrain our right to privacy by giving the government ability to surveil our entire population. We sort of knew that this was happening on a large scale, and then Snowden revealed that it was happening on a very larger than any scale in history. Privacy rights are constrained by governments' ability to maintain national security. Free speech is a foundational right, but it's not an absolute right. Free speech is constrained by our lack of ability to slander other people. Freedom of the press is constrained by our lack of ability to print libel. Freedom of assembly is constrained against riots. The right to life itself has at times in our history been constrained in the form of drafts to fight our wars. People did not even get their right to life for the sake of the country. And more shamefully, we have given up the right to autonomy in the Japanese internment camps. We take away rights conditionally, depending on the demands of the history that we are living in. You can hold that we have a right to bear arms. You cannot hold that the right to bear arms is somehow absolute. Period. The right to bear arms is a constrained right, like every other right that exists. And this tragedy, along with so many others that have happened in this country, too many. There are too many. We need to have a discussion around the constraints for what it means to have a right to bear arms. We do not need to eliminate the right to bear arms in order to constrain that right in the way that we have done in the past. Our history gives us the context that we need to make decisions about how to constrain rights, and we need to constrain the right to bear arms. Period.